You're listening to the Sass Says podcast. I'm your host, Christy Rocha, also known as Sass. I identify as a woman, a wife, and a mother. That should tell you a lot already. And over the last few years, I've learned the value of talk therapy. I have seen how my inner work not only enhances my own well-being, but also my marriage, my parenting, my relationships. And in fact, you wouldn't be hearing this right now if it weren't for the work I've done. My mission is to debunk the misconceptions and stigmas around what therapy is and who it's for. Let's normalize working on our mental health and seeking help when needed. We've all heard of self-care, self-help, and self-love, but do you often wonder how to actually make it all happen? I do. You'll hear strategy-based conversations with professionals, as well as inspiring and validating stories from women who are just like you and me. Think of this podcast as the weekly therapy sessions you didn't know you needed, with a dash of sass, a lot of vulnerability, and me, relentlessly asking, but how? Hello. My guest today is Adriana Keefe. Adriana is an award-winning real estate dropout turned life and manifestation coach who teaches entrepreneurs how to retrain their brain to build confidence and quit the hustle mentality. She is a wife and a mom of 3, lover of wine and New Girl, and host of the podcast Women Who Want More. Her obsession in life is working with highly emotional and empathic women who want to understand that their emotions are their superpowers and live up to their fullest potential. Today, she and I talk about growth mindset, the intersection of marriage and personal development, the power of manifestation and how to start. We talk about emotional intelligence. What is it? How do we nurture it? Adriana also shares her personal story of changing careers and working through childhood trauma. All right, here she is. Hey, Adriana. So nice to meet you. Thank you for being here with me today.
Well, hello, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, I have so many questions for you. And I think I want to just start with your story a little bit. You have transitioned careers, changed your whole life around. Talk to me a little bit about where you were and where you are now. I know it's a loaded question, but do your best.
I know. Do you want me to go as far back as like what I went to college for, or do you want me to go like where my quarter life crisis started?
Let's start with the quarter life crisis.
Okay. So cutting all that beginning part out, I ended up in real estate, which is obviously not what I went to school for, whatever. This is what I was told I'd be good at, I'd make good money in, which was all true. I was a mom to one girl at the time. I was a single mom for a little while. And then I met someone who's my now husband. So at the time was my boyfriend. And we were like, oh, real estate seems like a really great idea. So I got into it. It was going really well. I won 2 awards in just my first year. And it was very reassuring. I was like, cool, like this is my path. This is great.
Gold star.
Yeah, right. I'm like nailing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then, a few years in, I'm starting to realize like I haven't brought my daughter to the beach at all. I haven't, we haven't done any weekend trips. I'm barely there the weeknights because, with real estate, you're working around everyone else's schedules. So as fulfilling as it was with money, and yes, it's also fulfilling to like see a brand new buyer buy their first home or a seller sell their beloved family home and helping them with that. Like that's rewarding. So I never want anyone to get that wrong about what I say. But looking back on it, I was just like, this doesn't mean that much to me that I'm missing this much time with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a very anxious person naturally. So I was like awake at night over, if anyone's ever bought and sold a house, you know how stressful real estate is. And I was constantly picking up my phone and checking my email. And like you, in the market that we're in, I know you live in New Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very similar market to here in Massachusetts, where it's like houses are going like that. And you have to be on, you have to be doing it. And so it wasn't the flexibility that people told me it would be, which was just because of the state of the market at the time.
How long ago was this that we're talking about?
2016 to 2020.
Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So so I was just really burnt out. I was exhausted. But I felt extremely guilty because on the outside looking in, I had it all. Like we had bought a house and, we were happily engaged and my daughter was healthy and everything was going great. And then we got married. And I was holding up, I got a lot of student debt from college, which a lot of people in our generation do. So I was like holding up my end of the finances, which is very important to me. Um, but I was miserable. And
Mm.
I've been known to like start things and stop things and start things and stop things. And I always saw that as like a downfall of mine. And I was like, great, I'm just quitting again. Like I'm just,
Mm.
why can't I ever be happy? That's what it felt like. So I pushed myself through it. And that was the wrong decision because it ended up with me just hitting a depression. And at this time I was pregnant with our second, and it was a struggle. And then so I was like, I had a very candid conversation with my husband, who's been very supportive the whole time, and was like, I can handle this financially if you need to figure your stuff out. So I made sure I was working with a therapist again. And then I started working with my own coach because at the time I also had a network marketing business. And I was like, well, this is making me happy. So I'm going to keep leaning into this. So I got my own coach, and actually I went through 3 life coaches, or 2 life coaches and then 1 business coach. I always have coaches. Like I think they're the best thing in the world.
Mhm.
And so my business coach was kind of like, you're really, really good at like this coaching aspect. And, anyone who's ever been in network marketing knows that there's a coaching aspect involved. And I was like, yeah, but like, coaching's not for me. Like, I love this model. I don't want to start my own business. But as time went on, I started to recognize like the benefits of opening my own coaching business and everything like that. And I'm very much the type of person who I listen to all the podcasts, I'll read all the books and listen to all the books on audio. And like, I'm constantly in personal development.
Mm.
And I've just evolved as a human over the past few years. I have worked through EMDR and other therapies for sexual trauma that I experienced as a child. And just this past few years for me, it's like past 4 or 5 years had just been so transformational from the inside out. And I think all of that led me to recognizing that I was good and air quote good enough to start coaching other women in my own capacity and teaching others how to do what I did, how to get out of that quarter life crisis, midlife crisis, whatever stage you're at, and come out the other side and know that everything that you're doing and feeling is totally valid and normal and okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I obviously have so many questions. How old are your kids now?
So the oldest is now 7, and then I have a
Okay.
2.5-year-old and an 8-month-old.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
In the thick of it.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote a note about when you said, you had a very candid conversation with your husband about your unhappiness. How did that go? How did you start that conversation? What did it look like, feel like, smell like?
Okay, I'm trying to
Because
remember.
I ask because I think that that can be a very scary conversation to approach, especially with your partner who wants nothing more than to see you happy and to support you and love you. And it can be scary for us as women to bring it up, and then it can be tough to manage whatever emotions come as response, especially when we're talking about a typical heterosexual male who just wants to fix it for us, and that's not possible. And so I'm wondering what that dynamic looked like for the two of you and how you approached it and how it went.
So I want to preface this with 2 things. 1, my husband had a good enough income that he could carry us if he needed to.
Mm.
And 2, I had a lot of student debt. Like I was saying earlier, like I don't have like the, oh, you went to school for a few years kind of debt. Like I went to veterinary school. I have debt, like college debt.
Mm.
So that was it feels easy to approach him, but also extremely guilty at the same time. So I can't remember exactly the conversation, but I do remember that a lot of it was like, you know, I started this with this intention, you know, we were going to continue flipping houses. We have flipped in the past, but it wasn't going that route because my husband was so busy in his day job. So like my expectations of what my real estate was going to look like was not what it ended up being. And that was partially on him because he, you know, didn't hold up his end. So there's a lot of different factors that went into that. But for the most part, it was like he could see how unhappy I was. Like I would just start crying. And, you know, a lot of it was just that anxiety that would come up. And I was pregnant too. So it was like extra, right? But just telling him like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what I want to do, but I know I need to take a step back. He, you know, his initial reaction is very much like he needs to stop and analyze and think about money. Like that's his very first reaction. And it's kind of painful for a minute because you have to sit there in the silence and let him process, which is kind of like, oh God, what's he going to say? And like, you don't know. But after talking through, like, I just really need to figure something else out. We were like, okay, where can we cut back? And, you know, what can we focus on? What do you want to put your energy into? And so he's very financially motivated and I'm very, am I happy and fulfilled motivated? So coming at it from two different ends can be really hard for communication, but overall, he doesn't want me to be miserable. He knows that I started in real estate and got my license with him. He also got his license with me because we had these goals of opening a flipping business and everything like that. So I think a part of that was him being like, I get it because this isn't what you wanted to do. You didn't want to just do a ton of residential for other people. So there's just a lot of different stuff that went into that. But overall, he was kind of like, I want you to be happy. So take this time, figure it out. He was on board with my first business coach cost. After that, he's not very much in the mindset of like investing in yourself. So after that first coach, he's just like, again.
Right.
Like, yeah, it's a constant, you're constantly growing. Like you don't just have one coach and then you're done. So it gets more difficult as we go on. But that initial conversation he was very, very open to, he knows that when I try something, I try it. Like I go all in. And if I don't like it, then I don't like it and I move on. But he knows that whatever I put my heart to, I'm going to succeed at. So I think he's a little bit more inclined to be like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Well, and I thank you for sharing because I think so many of us can relate to that dynamic. You know, you and I are sitting here talking on a podcast that I have because it fulfills me while my husband is at work, you know, and the idea, right, is to monetize, is to make it a business, is to be everything. And it will be, and this is so, but in the meantime, it's like, okay, I guess it's like, for him, it's like, I guess I'll go off to work, have fun with your passion project, you know, like it's tough. And I think too, just as women, we're naturally more inclined to see things a certain way and feel, and, you know, I'm grossly generalizing right now, but that inclination for your male partner to think about money, think about stability, think about the more practical, quote unquote, aspects of your life and making changes, I think is a very relatable dynamic. So I appreciate you sharing. The idea of being
ended with me in tears because
of course.
I'm very much like I have parents who worked hard and to not make an income, that pains me. I am personally not someone who is willing to give it all up for my husband and let him carry us all. It's not me. So that was very painful and vulnerable for me to say to him.
Which I'm sure he knew, you know, knowing you. All right. And then this idea of being constantly in personal development, I relate to this. And my question to you is an opinion question, but, you know, a lot of your story that you shared, I think a lot of us can relate to. It's, you know, you go to school, you get a job, you get the partner, you have the kids, and you look around like, okay, now what? And do you think there are people that do all those things, do the step-by-step guide that like society has given us, and they get to a certain point and they are truly content?
I think that it is very few and far between
Yeah.
that someone can just like climb those stairs that we're supposed to climb and then get there and be happy forever. I think
Yeah.
it's possible. I think it's rare. How
Yeah.
are we supposed to know what to do with the rest of our lives at age 18?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I was listening to your show, and you were talking about this, and you said that one of the first things that helped you when you started to really dig into your discomfort and your unhappiness was learning that you weren't alone in that. And the whole time I'm going like, yeah, I get it. I get it. Like I'm in the personal development phase too, and I constantly like when I'm out in the world and I'm just at the grocery store, I'm at the pickup line, whatever, I'm like looking at women and I'm not actually making an active judgment at all. I'm just looking at them and going, are you in this phase too? Like, are you doing it? Or like, you know what I mean? Like, I think once now that I'm in it, the combination of therapy, the podcast, the books, all of it, 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 I can't fathom a world where you could get through it happily without doing all this. So like, we all have to be doing it, right?
I know exactly what you're talking
You
about.
know what I mean? Like, I just don't get it. I don't get like how you could get to the end of your life, you know, not having done this. And it just sometimes I wonder, and I'll end my rant in a second, but sometimes I wonder because I chose to have a podcast about it, I wonder if I'm just exposed to it so much that it feels normal to me. That when I say I'm out in the world, I'm going, is it like normal out here in the grocery store too? Or is it just in my little podcast world where I interview coaches and therapists and women who want to talk about it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yes. And that took me a little while to understand, like after I started my own coaching business and my husband was trying to figure out, what he wanted to be when he grew up.
Right.
My husband is now in the phase that I was in, where he just quit his job in December and is now trying to figure his life out. But back when I first started my coaching business, he'd be complaining about his job. I totally think he's like outside the door. So I'm like, but he'd be like complaining about his job. And I would give him these books and these podcasts. And like, I'd be like, yeah, but let's do this and let's do that. And I'd try and do exercises with him. And it was like falling on deaf ears. And even to this day, it's just some people want to prioritize it and some don't. And you can lead a horse to water, right? But
Yeah.
I think that there's the few that achieve their goals in life. Those are the few that are achieving their goals in life. Like those are the people who are constantly in personal development and growth mindset and all of the stuff that we're into. And that's a very small percentage of the world. It can feel like it's all of us because of the people we're starting to hang out with, right?
Yeah.
So we're like
totally.
surrounding ourselves with like-minded entrepreneurs and women. So we're like, oh, everybody knows this, right?
Right.
But as you learn, like when I was becoming a new coach, I would tell my business coach, I was like, but what do I have to teach them? And then she'd be like, literally everything, because you're not the norm. The normal doesn't read Carol Dweck's growth mindset book. Like the normal doesn't listen to all these intuitive things. Like, so we just have that 10% edge that people either don't care to have or don't yet understand that it's available to them.
Yeah. Okay. So let's focus on those who don't know that it's available to them. Is that who you would say, knocks on your door, so to speak, and is like, help me? Like, who's coming to you? What are they looking to get out of the experience? And what does it look like to work with you?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the people that are coming to me now are different than the people who are coming to me before.
Okay.
So the people who were coming to me before were very much like unaware of what a coach does. doesn't understand what they need in life, and therefore isn't quite ready to invest in themselves wholeheartedly, whether that's financially or whether that's with the time, the energy, whatever. So take a lot of moms, for example. Moms, we are awful at investing in ourselves. So we'll be like, we know we need this. We know we need help with getting rid of all the excess crap in our life that's weighing us down. We know we need help with growth and whatever, but oh, but my child really wants to do that extracurricular activity and that's the same amount of money. So I'm going to give that to them. Like that's the norm. So that's who was really gravitating toward me at first, because they wanted to know how I got out of that. And so I worked with a lot of women, and I spoke at a seminar last night for women on decluttering their homes and their lives, and the deeper level that it goes, like all the brain work underneath why we have all that clutter and why we need to get rid of it. That is very much where I started in coaching. But now the women who gravitate toward me are a lot more high achievers. Like they're high achievers like myself, and they are either in their own business or in a corporate gig of some sort. And they're recognizing that they need to find their balance. I hate the word balance because I don't think that there's ever a true balance. I think it's a give and a take, but it's finding their balance. And I used to always get the question, like, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? Because from the outside, if you don't listen to my podcast, if you don't follow me on Instagram, it probably looks like I've got everything all together, right? And I can do all the things. But the truth is I don't. I have an assistant who works with me. I have a nanny. I have people who help me babysit on the weekends if I need to. Like, I'm not doing this alone. So a lot of my work now is about the mindset and the growth mindset and the retraining your brain, neuroplasticity for growth, the high achievers who want to achieve more, but they're stuck in their head. And how can we get out of that?
All right. So, okay. So now we sign up, and like someone who has no idea what it means to work with a coach, like give me a little bit of the day to day. Like, what does it actually entail?
Coaches it's like the wild, wild west, right? It's not like therapy where you have to like be educated at a certain degree, whatever. So with coaching, it can be tricky. You have to make sure that the coach that you're hiring is either specifically an expert in what you're looking for, or knowledgeable in the things that you want to do, etc. For me personally, I approach coaching in a more holistic way. So when I'm working with someone, I'm doing mind, body, soul. We're doing meditation, mindfulness. We're talking about what foods they're eating. I'm not a nutritionist by any means, but I understand what foods fuel our body and what take away our energy and what are not good for us for growth. So we look at everything, your daily habits, your routines, your practices, how that's either helping you achieve high or hindering you where you want to be growing more and you're stuck. And then, so we work on what you want to understand about yourself, who you are at your core, what your core values are, what's important to you. And then we identify where you want that growth, because sometimes when people come to me, they're like, I'm just stuck and I don't know what the next step should be. Some people come to me being like, I want to get to this amount of money, or I want to have this much growth in my business, and I just don't know how. Let's do that. So if they have their goals already set, we work on a pathway to get there. If they don't have their goals set, we figure them out, and then we work on a path to get there. So it's more than therapy, whereas like we have an actual framework, a plan. We go through your entire body. We talk about your intuition, your inner voice, emotional intelligence, all of that, piece it all together, because I feel like, or I know to be true is, if you're working hard, but you're treating your body like crap, you're not getting as far as you could be. And if you're working on your body hard, but your mindset's not there, you're not going to get as far in your business or whatever it is. So it's your entire body is connected. And that's the way that I approach it, just more holistic with goal-oriented kind of teaching, I guess.
Okay. So talk to me about emotional intelligence. What is it and how does it come into practice with what you do? Like, I don't know anything. I don't know. You go.
Yeah. I get that question a lot. emotional intelligence, if you want to break it down really simply, is becoming extremely self-aware, aware of how your emotions are, how your emotions affect others, aware of how your energy and everything you do is affecting yourself and everyone around you, verbal communication, everything. So if you're someone who identifies as an empath, you're naturally probably very emotionally intelligent. And this lately has been researched a lot, and they're seeing that your EQ, which is your emotional quotient, is even more important than your IQ in leadership and management and any form of business. Because if we are, smart enough to know the numbers and the stats or whatever, but we have no communication skills, we have no self-awareness, no social awareness, then how far are we really going to get, right? So emotional intelligence is a lot of that. It's a lot of that inner work, but also understanding emotions at a deep capacity and how your reactions affect others.
Okay. How do you work with someone to nurture that?
A lot of it starts with meditation.
Okay.
And if there's someone who is against meditation because they really can't, they just feel like they cannot do it physically, which I've had clients say, then we do some sort of visualizations. We do practices surrounding their core values and what their vision is for an ideal day. A lot of writing, a lot of just writing, letting your hand free flow without judgments, that inner voice coming out kind of work. And that's where the self-awareness piece comes into play. And I feel like the more that they can become self-aware, to me, I feel like that's what I focus on the most, because everything else after that kind of seems to fall in place. When they say a word and they start to recognize what other people's facial expressions look like when they say that, and they're like, oh, because the more you focus on something, the more it's called your ARIS, your ascending reticular activating system. When you focus on something, it shows up more. Have you ever wanted to buy a car and you're like, oh, wow, that car is literally everywhere now? That's what it is. So the more that you can talk about emotional intelligence, self-awareness, everything like that, they're going to start naturally noticing it as much too, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay. So which for me, and I wonder what your experience is having gone to therapy. That is a lot of what therapy is too, at least for me, just helping to, it's just slowing down. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like slowing down and paying attention to things that you normally would not pay attention to, that you would just let float by your brain. And it's hitting pause and going, why am I thinking that? Why am I saying that? Why am I feeling that? And
very much so.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is a lot of like the rewiring of the brain that I teach as well, because when you have negative thoughts come up, I teach you to stop and analyze what that thought is.
Yeah.
So that way you can start to reframe those thoughts and behaviors.
Yeah. And I think what's so interesting to me in my experience with negative thoughts is that, and I've said this before on the show, it's like when you hear that as a concept and as an idea, I would never think of myself as someone who sits around just thinking negatively, right? I think of myself as a generally positive, optimistic person. But it isn't until you're actually paying attention. Like, I don't know how to describe it, that I would hear them. It was like all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm like almost unconsciously doing this all day long and I didn't even realize it. It's not like you just sit down and go, okay, I'm going to spend the next hour sitting on the couch talking negatively to myself. And some people might, honestly, but that wasn't my experience. So it really had to take hearing someone like you, my therapist, your colleagues, just beating it into me, so to speak.
Yeah, seriously. It's like you walk by the mirror when you're getting into the shower, you catch a glimpse of your body and you're like, oh, woof. And it's like, that is the negative energy that you don't realize until someone's like, okay, stop, write it down every time you think of it. And then you're like, oh my God, I did it like 29,000 times. Do you know how many thoughts we have in a single day?
Oh, I want to say like 3 million. Like, I don't know.
50,000. 50,000. Yeah. That's the
I overshot it a little.
Well, everyone does. That's why I laughed. Everyone does.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot. And
it is a lot.
the majority of those are negative. Like,
yeah.
Could that be why you're in the space that you are?
Right. Okay. All right. And so talk to me about the manifestation piece of your coaching and what are we getting wrong about manifestation? Like, what do you teach and what are we not understanding about it?
Yeah. I love this. So I became certified in manifesting using the law of attraction a little while ago. And I did that more because it's something that I am extremely interested in. And I was naturally using with my clients anyway. So I was like, might as well get the certification. But it sounds fancy, but all it really is manifestation means to bring a thought or idea into reality. And the law of attraction is stating that like energy attracts like energy, right? It's very simple and it's actually science. It is not some woo-woo or spiritual, whatever. There's science that backs this up, right? There's literally science that shows if you talk to a plant in a positive or negative way, that shows how it will grow or die. And I tested this in my own home because I kill literally every plant. I don't know how many kids are alive because I kill plants like there's no tomorrow. I killed a succulent. Like, are you serious?
That is hard to do.
It is hard to do. So I tested on my plants and it works. I don't know how. It's just like, I mean, I know how, but it's just like still crazy to me.
Right.
But it's the energy waves, positive or negative, is shown through research that your voice, your thoughts, everything are positive or negative. So manifesting to bring a thought or idea to your reality. And then if you are using the law of attraction, right, you're thinking about what energy, what frequency am I putting out there? Am I fully stepping into this being, this whole, I feel good, I am good. And so I'm attracting more, because that's how you're going to continue to manifest your goals, dreams into your reality. So that it's very simple, but it takes practice. It's like everything you see, you write, you think, you have to learn to redirect those words and those thoughts into a more positive way. And then they will manifest into your life if you continue focusing on how everything you're doing is getting put out there into the world. And it's not as simple as like that documentary, The Secret, made it look like. People are like, great, I can think positive thoughts and boom, done. It's like, no, it's a simple process, but it's not that like, no, you have to actually take inspired action. You have to actually be allowing yourself to focus on that one thing at a time. That's your reticular activating system that we were just talking about with the car. Like, what can I focus on right now? Because when you start to focus on it, think on it, write on it, dream on it, envision it, that's when you start seeing these opportunities rise up. And that's how the manifestation comes into your life.
Okay. So, okay. And I'm glad you clarified that it's easy, but no, well, not easy, simple, but takes practice, because I am the type of person that thinks of it in the way of like, okay, I need to take 10 minutes and manifest, I need to like schedule it. And I know that it's not quite that. Like, maybe it starts like that, but it's changing your entire outlook, or like and I just want to say, like, it just like seeps into your bones and
yes,
becomes part of you.
You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. And I think once you can really come to terms with that and fully like bring that into your life, that's when you can see a shift.
Okay. And so talk to me now about, someone listening and thinking, great, like I want a Mercedes. Like what, like, tell me the difference. Tell me, like I interviewed Chelsea Rife, and she caught a glimpse of my vision board, and she shared with me that my vision board, had a lot of stuff on it. And she was like, that's fine. She's like, but we need a piece on your vision board that evokes a feeling. Like, okay, you take over, because you're nodding and you know what I'm saying, because we're not just trying to manifest a Mercedes, right? Yeah, like, we're manifesting choice, we're manifesting freedom, we're manifesting I want to say like financial freedom, and just like ease, relief, like that's it. But where do we start? Like, how do we start to take it from I'm manifesting a Mercedes to I'm manifesting a lifestyle? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, very much so. I think this is another thing that like The Secret got wrong, or people were getting wrong because they watched The Secret, is because they're like, okay, well, I'm thinking about how much I want it, right? But then maybe you see someone in that exact car that you want, and all of a sudden you just get super jealous, and you're just like, those feelings of envy come up, and those aren't positive feelings, right? So now your mind and the energy you're putting out there is confused. Like, this is confusing energy. I thought you said you wanted this, but you see this, but now it's bringing up bad energy. Like, it doesn't make sense. So manifesting is about the feelings and the energy behind every intention. So like, looking at, like, I have two of my vision boards here because I was redoing it. And so I have on here like purpose, because that means a lot to me, happiness, money, because I'm very open that wealth means a lot to me, family. And I have the quote, my life is tough, my darling, but so are you. And all of this evokes feelings of how much I've gone through, how much I continue to go through, and, pull out on the other side, my resilience, right? And these feelings, this is where the energy comes from. It's like taking 10 minutes to make a gratitude list, but not stopping and feeling that gratitude. There's a big difference there. You can sit there and write, like, I am so grateful for this podcast recording today. I'm so grateful for the connections I made, blah, blah, blah. And you're just like, another task off the checklist for done for today.
Right.
But that's not putting any energy into it. You're not letting yourself sit there and feel those feelings. I think the first time this really hit home for me, this was before I became certified, before I started coaching, was when I was pregnant with my second, and I started to envision my labor and delivery with her. And I envisioned it so deeply. It's because it was my first home birth that I was having. And so for me, I was scared, but I had all these good emotions, and I would sit there. It was pretty much every night I'd go to bed, or in the morning when I'd meditate, and I'd envision exactly how I saw that labor and delivery going. And in me, I could feel the emotions coming up. It's like when you think of a really happy old memory and you start tearing up. Like, that's the kind of emotion you want. And I am not exaggerating. My daughter was born the exact way, place, time, the exact length of time that I wanted. Like, I literally was like, okay, I would like to labor like 6 to 8 hours long, because I don't want it so quick that I'm like, oh my God, it's coming. But I also don't want another 21-hour labor. So like, literally everything, her whole birth story is online. And I manifested that. I know I did. And that's what really spiraled me into, oh my God, this is real. Like, I need to do this. But I had so much emotion behind that. That's where the energy, the frequency that you're putting out there, that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. Right. Like, because, we know, just to keep my same example going, we know it's not really the Mercedes that gives us the emotion. It's whatever it is to you, but it's the ability to do it. You might even have the means and decide you don't want it anymore. Like, that's what hits for me too. Okay. It does make sense. And
yeah, like, see yourself driving that Mercedes. What does that feel like? What
Right.
does it mean? Does that mean that you all of a sudden have this influx of income? Does that mean that you inherited something? Like, what does all that mean?
Yeah.
That's when you can really start to get things in your life that you want. I mean, that's why when someone has like a bad morning, and they're thrown off for the rest of the day and it feels like everything bad keeps happening, that's why. It's the same thing, but it's the negative effect.
Okay. So how does all of this, the manifestation, the emotional intelligence, all the work that you do, how does it impact you personally when you say you're, naturally an anxious person, you've been through significant trauma in your life? What's the connection for you now? Like, how do you use the tools for yourself?
Oof, that's a good question. So a lot of my tools in mindfulness, like the meditation and whatnot, that started on my yoga journey, which was also during my quarter life crisis. And I truly believe that yoga was one of the things that saved my life, because it made me slow down and made me start to understand things. And that's when I started to freak out and hit that quarter life crisis, which was a good thing, right? And all these tools along the way have, well, let's just say I grew up in a household that was not entrepreneurial. It was not emotionally intelligent. We were sent to our rooms to cry alone, or, whatever. Like my parents, they're good parents. They love us. They're just very typical of that generation, right? Like you have to work really hard, like many hours a week to make any sort of money. Like it's just all the things that you don't want to live by nowadays. And I think things like manifestation help me continue to be resilient, help me continue to push through on the really bad days, and to understand that there is more out there for me, that I don't have to settle for what the society that I lived in expects of me. A lot of my work I take with me to continue to grow myself, because I know that I'm not even close to what I have to offer this world. I know that there's so much more to come for me, but I have to continue to practice what I preach and stay on my path, or I will get lost. I will. I mean, I have I'm still working through traumas. I think that every single person has some sort of trauma that they can work through, some to lesser degrees, some to more. And I can very easily slip into my anxious, depressive state if I'm not working on myself. And these tools just really help me continue to get to that vision. I see myself years from now speaking on big stages. Like I'm already speaking at events, but they're much smaller. I see myself like big, like, and writing a book and doing all those things. And I'm not going to get there being the person that I was raised to be. I have to become the person that I want to be. And that's where all those tools help me.
What does it look like for you when the anxiety, some depression starts to take over? What does it feel like and look like for you?
That for the anxiety, I can feel I start to get a lot of chest pain. And it's funny, when I was in college, it happened a lot, and they just kept sending me to the hospital and doing EKGs, and they put me on a heart monitor and all that stuff. And not once did anyone talk about mental health. Not once did anyone tell me about panic attacks or anxiety. And it's
oh my
like,
gosh.
I wasn't diagnosed with anxiety until I was like 25, maybe. And so I spent a long time just suffering with that chest pain and not understanding what it was, and thinking like I had a heart problem that they couldn't fix or find.
Which just adds a layer of stress and
Right.
angst and scariness.
Right?
Yeah.
Very much so. So when that starts coming up, I can tell when I'm not taking enough time to meditate or slow down. When I'm hustling and grinding, that hustle culture, I fall into that very easily. So I have to be mindful of that, to slow down and remember that when I surrender, good things come. But when that chest pain's creeping up, man, I'm like, okay, back off. I have to slow down. There's too much going on right now. I'm too overstimulated. And then as for the depressive feelings, I'm very happy to say it's been a while since I've been in that state, but that depression does run in my family. My father was in the hospital on suicide watch for, I don't remember when that was. I think I was maybe a preteen, but he's struggled with depression as long as I can remember. And so I'm very, I don't know if vulnerable is the right word, predisposed to depression, but I'm very happy to say it has never gotten to that point. I'm just naturally aware of my feelings and emotions. Like emotional intelligence piece came easily to me. So I'm able to catch myself now and understand, okay, I'm feeling this kind of way. I'm feeling these feelings of deep sadness that I can't pull out of. So I know what I need to do. I need to, for me personally, it's like getting dinner and drinks with a friend, getting a massage and releasing some tension, meditating extra. Like I have my ongoing list, hiking in the woods with my dogs. Those are things that I automatically know pull me up a level. And I'm not going to go right from that depressive state to pure joy. It's not something you should expect of yourself. But if you can move up a little bit more each day by doing things that you know you need, like even if that's taking a week back from work to just sleep and be in tune with what I need right then and there, then I can pull out of it a lot faster.
Does it ever like piss you off that you have to do all that just to exist? And I say that from a place of relating, like I
Yeah.
don't, not judgment, just like every now and then when I'm going for a walk and taking 5 minutes to breathe, I'm like, God, like, can I just get through this day without having to check in on myself 400 times?
That's so valid. I know what you're talking about. I have felt irritated with my anxiety for that reason
Yeah.
because I'll be in situations where my husband's dealing with the stimulation just fine and I'm over there like panicking and I'm like, I can't breathe. The
Right.
walls are closing in on me. And
Right.
I get so irritated. Yes.
Right.
I think over the past few years, I've come to understand that it's a part of being a human. And I think that I've really started to embrace the fact that I'm still here and I'm still breathing and I'm still capable of feeling these feelings. And that can be a beautiful and scary thing at the same time. But that's coming from someone who has not been as deep as my father has.
Right.
So
Yeah.
had that been the case, then I might feel differently.
And what was or is currently your experience working with a therapist?
Mm. I have had a therapist, let's see, only since I think that pregnancy with my second child. And I keep up with her like at least monthly because I just feel like it's important to not just talk, but to do it in a space that people are going to keep questioning you so that maybe the deeper things that you don't think are there come through. And that's how we can continue to heal. Because if we keep stuffing things down, thinking this is fine, everything's fine, like it's gonna come up. And for me, I am very much the type of person who holds everything in and then I explode. So understanding that there's someone I can talk to every few weeks who can pinpoint and also when she first diagnosed me with complex PTSD, it felt like I was very seen and heard. And for so long, I was just like, what is wrong with me? And it sounds stupid because yes, I was abused as a child. So naturally you'd be like, well, obviously you have some PTSD, but like complex PTSD is a bit different.
Yeah.
And seeing that and hearing those symptoms, I was like, oh my God, that's me. And I felt very, very seen.
Yeah. I had Cecile Tucker on. She's a therapist who mainly works with clients who suffer CPTSD. And the difference is between what we think of as post-traumatic stress, not just post-traumatic stress, but the difference then between complex, like it's a very necessary nuance to pay attention to and be aware of. Did you start therapy thinking I need to work out my childhood trauma, or did that come up throughout like whatever was going on presently?
No, at the time when I started therapy, it was when I was crying a lot, miserable in real estate, and trying to just figure my stuff out. When after some time in that, what was it, about a year and a half, 2 years, then we started to be like, okay, there's this trauma and we've talked about it, but you need to work through it deeper. And she wasn't licensed in EMDR. So I then had a second therapist for EMDR for specifically this trauma work, which was great. It was hard, but it was great.
What is that? What is that type of therapy?
Oh, I don't even know if I could explain it to you. Have you ever seen like on shows, like there's a light going back and forth and their eyes are following the light and they're like talking? That's EMDR. And it's supposed to be, it's like desensitizing your brain to those memories. So like the memories are still there. The flashbacks still come up, but now for the most part, they're neutral feelings. Whereas before, they could literally leave me like feeling debilitated. Like I would just be crying and I would have my heart racing. But the EMDR actually helps you neutralize those feelings. I hope for any professional listening to this that I explain that okay. Because
and look, like neither of us are therapists, and I was asking more, I guess, and I should have said from your point of view, you know, like what your experience was with it and what it, and that's fine. It's we're not claiming to be, you know, doctors or therapists here. It's just from your experience, from your personal time, you know, using that type of therapy and being involved in it. What I've come to find in parenting is that as you parent, you really start to have to kind of reparent the parts of yourself that you didn't even know you needed to reparent. What has that experience been like for you in your motherhood journey and all the personal work you've done on yourself?
With every child that we have, we become a new person, and it's like all of the attention is given to the baby. Let's do the baby shower, let's bring the baby gifts, can I hold the baby? And we've forgotten to take care of the mother. So mom goes in, becomes a mom for the first time, and that's where a lot of times the identity crisis hits. And for me, I don't feel like that hit until later. Around that time with real estate and everything, I'm actually surprised I had a somewhat smooth transition into motherhood. And so I feel like it's a constant having to find yourself over and over again every time. And there's a very huge lack of education in how to do that. So for me personally, it's like our kids, man, I think that we're all going to screw up our kids like a little bit. No matter what, no matter how hard you try, we're all going to get screwed up a little. But I think that they're definitely teaching me patience, for one. They're teaching me exactly what I wish that I had as a child, which is I wish I had more empathy. I wish I had someone to communicate with me more. I wish I had parents who stood by me more. Like when I came forward saying that I was being abused by someone, nothing was done. It was very much like we don't want to see this. It's not happening. And so having to work through that a lot on myself, and that's a whole separate trauma in itself. Like that's another trauma after the abuse, and really recognizing like who I want to be for my kids and how to make that change, how to make that shift. It's a constant like work in progress. I feel like we just don't really know. I think it's a journey. I don't know that we'll ever really get there. I think it's just a journey of what feels good, what keeps you lit up and fulfilled. And that's just going to be the path. I don't really know if we come home to ourselves ever, or if we just keep going.
You don't know if we ever come home to ourselves or we just keep going. That's interesting. Because, well, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. That's interesting. Because I think that so much of what we do in personal development is trying to come home, right? And we find pieces of it, but then life changes, right? I guess is the point you're making. And then, you know, you have another kid and things change, or you get change jobs or change partners or lose someone, and we've got to shift gears, maybe start over again. And I'm dancing around it, Adriana. I'm dancing around the questions and whatnot, but is what you experienced as a child like something from like an A to Z that you would feel comfortable sharing the
Oh,
context of it?
I'm fine sharing it. Yeah.
So what happened? Is this a family member, or how old were you? Whatever you want to share.
It's funny because working through a lot of it, I think a lot of people who have been through some sort of trauma experience the memory loss that also comes with it. So it was really hard trying to identify like the timeline and everything like that. I want to say it was between the ages of like 8 and 10. And I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything because I felt very much like, the typical kid. Like that was another thing that I had to process in therapy was why didn't I do anything? My life would be so different if I did something. And I had to learn from multiple therapists that your body literally goes into fight or freeze mode. And my body chose to freeze. And, as you can tell from the years later, when I ended up coming forward about that and was not believed, that's another reason why I probably didn't come forward as a child, because I wouldn't have felt seen and heard. So why would I talk about it? So that happened for a couple of years. Held it in for all my teen years. Did not, no, I ended up saying something when I got into an argument with a parent when I was in my teen years. And then I don't want to put any names out there. So I'll just leave that at that. But then when I became a mom to my oldest, so my first child, she was a girl. And that I remember looking at her one day and just being like, I cannot let people out there get away with things like this. Like if this ever happened to her, oh my God, guns would be ablazing. Like I don't know what I would do. And so in that moment, I decided I was going to press charges. And anyone who's ever been through that knows how hard that is. They make you dig up all this dirt and dig up the timelines and all that. And we were still within the statutes of limitations for most of it. So I could press charges. But of course I lost because there's like an astounding number of women who lose every single day because there's no physical evidence, right? It's he said, she said.
That's another trauma you need to process, the loss
It is.
there.
Yeah. Which I still have not processed because I ended up having my son. And so I obviously haven't been back to EMDR since having him, dealing with my own postpartum stuff. So that's something I got to go back to therapy for. But yeah, that's kind of been the journey. And he's still out there. He's still living his life like nothing. Tore apart my family, but let's talk about another trauma I have to work through. But I did what I felt was right, and I stand by that. And I talk to my children every single day about who can touch their body, who can't, and just hoping that they'll feel open and that they can communicate with me if something ever does go wrong, and knowing that they can punch someone out if they do touch them.
Thank you for sharing. And I think when willing, I think it's important to share and talk about, because like you said, this is happening every day. And I think a lot of us like to exist in a world where we think it's not, because it's not our reality and it's not our family, and that would never happen to us. And the fact is it does. And it's a horrible thing. And I'm so sorry you had to go through all that. And, what would you say to parents now? Like, knowing what you went through, knowing you weren't believed, you weren't listened to, you didn't have the experience that you deserved once you spoke up. What do you want to say to parents about that?
I think it's important for parents to understand the brain when it comes to trauma. And to not sit there and question, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you do something? Why didn't? Because your brain, there's this great book called The Body Keeps the Score.
I'm reading it right
And
now.
oh
I'm
gosh,
literally
so
halfway through it.
it is so eye-opening.
Yeah.
And to understand that, they must be lying because they didn't do anything, or whatever, or they're still going over to that house, so like obviously there's not really a problem. There's so much more that goes into it that I can't explain, because there's literally so much. Like, go read the book. Like the
Yeah.
brain literally is in survival mode and things like that, and then why it continues to go back into those dangerous situations, it's all explained in that book. And so I think before asking judgmental questions, I would learn, I would understand, but obviously be there for them, sit there, hold their hand if they are okay with being touched, and ask them to explore and tell you whatever they want to, and then go from there, just to make them feel seen and validated and heard. I think would be the biggest thing.
Yeah. I'm, like I said, I'm halfway through it. And I think one of the first, pieces of reading that I was like, whoa, and on a much lesser scale, but I have really struggled to describe in a way that I feel does it justice, what it feels like to be depressed to someone who has never really experienced a true depressive state. I think that everyone from time to time feels depressed, but to be in a depressive state and to be there for days on end, I've not found a really solid way of doing the experience justice with words. And there was a part in that book where, he's basically like, it's not possible. It's not possible to put words to trauma. There's a part of your brain that just cannot put words to it. And I was like, it was just very validating. And it was very, in a way, I felt relief, because it was like, you know what? This mission I've been on to try and find the right words, I probably won't ever fully find the right words. So I can like take a breath on this,
Yes.
Yeah. And I think it's really good. And I think that it does speak a lot to, the big T trauma and the type of trauma that you experienced. And for those of us that have not, and we've experienced a trauma of our own, like you said earlier, I think everyone has a trauma of some degree to work through. You find ways to connect to it all, because at the end of the day, your trauma is your trauma, whether it's on a level that someone out there would deem big or small, it's yours. And so, okay, so we're big advocates for that book.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so much so that I actually partnered for this year, for year 2022, I partnered with Jasmine Grace Outreach, who helps with sex trafficking victims and getting them out of those situations and putting them in homes. And so 10% of all my packages sold this year is going to them. And that was like, I wanted to find someone who did something for women who had some sort of sexual trauma. And I just met with them, and I talked to their financial people, made sure all the resources were being spent wisely. And I was just, I need to get behind this cause.
Yeah.
For that reason, like they're not being seen and heard, and they're ending up in rehabs and addicted to drugs, and just is awful. So it's like, what can I do to help other people that I wish I had?
Yeah. And this isn't much of a transition other than you helping people, but your podcast is Women Who Want More. And you're doing just that. You're helping women who want more. And what does more mean to you?
I actually just recorded an episode this morning with someone on what that means in general. And we were like, it means something different to everyone. So it's so funny that you say that, because to me, wanting more means more, less, like less burden, less hustling, less
That's interesting.
overwhelm.
Yeah. I like that.
So that's what I want. I want more of the time freedom. I want more of the presence with my kids. I want more of being intentional with my time, which for me means less. That's why I choose to work part-time. That's why I choose to have a weekday off with my kids. And that's why I choose to have most weekends off and be with my family, because I went through that season of my life where I was like, more work, more money, more this, more that. And I was like, whoa, no, I need more of less.
I
Yeah.
really like that.
Mhm.
More or less.
Yeah, more or
That's
less.
good. That's good. Oh my goodness. Well, Adriana, is there any final word of wisdom or any final thought that you want to leave the listeners with today?
This conversation just like went so in so
I
many
know.
areas. I could say so many things,
I know.
but I
And you
think
know what? There's so many notes that I didn't even get to. So we may need a part two.
we'll do a round two, right?
Yeah.
I know. I think that the commonality between everything we've talked about, though, is the mind work and accepting yourself and coming to understand who you are at your core and what you need out of life. It's like going back to who you were as a child before this world burdened you with the expectations and the traumas and everything else. So I think if there's one thing that you could really take and run with from listening to this, I would hope it would be to slow down, breathe, and learn who you are. Like, allow yourself to listen to your intuition, to follow your curiosity, to read the books that you've been wanting to read but haven't been prioritizing, to take the vacation that you want to take and keep making excuses for. Like, allow yourself to live this life that you're in. Don't get to the end of your life wishing you had done it differently.
Boom.
Boom. Mic
We'll
drop.
leave it at that. I mean, Adriana, thank you so much. This was really great. And I'm not kidding. I have printed out notes and some handwritten notes, like the whole decluttering thing. I was like, well, we got to get to that, but next time. So thank you
We'll do it
again.
again.
This was great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being here with you.
So first of all, obviously, beyond so thankful for Adriana for sharing your story. I, like you, believe in the power of storytelling and the empowerment that comes from it, not only for ourselves, but for those who hear our stories and relate or learn something new. And for me right now, I'm having that moment where the universe keeps putting something in my face, and that is about mindset. This conversation was such a great reminder of my own need and desire to boost my mindset morale. Is that a thing? Did I just make that up? But, hearing Adriana say things like attracting what you are and when I surrender, good things come. These are things I really need to hear right now. If you heard my solo show on Wednesday about the current state of my mental health, then you know how much I needed to listen to this conversation again. So before we go our separate ways, I have to remind you of the amazingness that is Modern Mom Style Box. Tara Clark, who you all know and love from the super popular Instagram account Modern Mom Probs and from episode 3 of the Sass Says podcast, launched this amazing new clothing rental service. Modern Mom Style Box makes it easy to wear new clothes all month long without any stress or commitment. From seasonal clothes, staples, statement pieces, rent unlimited looks for just one flat fee of $60 a month. Take it from me, you're gonna want this. The link and details are in the show notes. Bye! Thank you so much for tuning in today. Sass Says is a production of Luann Nigara Inc. This podcast is meant to be educational and not meant to replace professional therapy or professional medical attention. To learn more about today's show and what's new in my world, head over to sasssays.com. Thanks so much. Talk later.